Welcome to the Catalyst Podcast. I'm your host, Charles Epstein. Today, I'm joined by Tom Karl, founder and CEO of Unwilling, an education company providing interactive, evidence-based curriculum that engages and retains individuals in service, increases practitioner effectiveness through workforce training, and generates data for measuring outcomes. R1 delivers greater engagement for the leading evidence-based and best practices for mental health and wellness, substance use and addiction, and life skills. Tom joins me today from his headquarters in Arlington, Virginia. Tom, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, Charles. Thank you for having me on the podcast today.
Oh, my pleasure. We are recording this Friday, 11 Eastern time. So I'm going to have to ask you for a quick weather check. This time of year, it's always a little bit of a dicey proposition.
Here in Virginia, it's thawing. We have actually sun. We had some snow earlier in the week, and it's melted. So that is good news for Virginia.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, as goes Virginia, so goes the nation, or at least
yes. I'm actually outside of D.C., Charles. I'm just outside of your nation's capital in Arlington, Virginia.
Why is it my nation's capital, not yours? I
always want to make sure that everybody knows.
I thought we shared this great experiment and experience. It's the American experience, Tom.
Just remind everybody
we're all equally exceptional, Tom.
Absolutely, yes, sir.
Anyway, I really do appreciate you joining me. We had a really good conversation leading up to this. So I visited your website, and there was a page in particular you directed me to, which I thought was particularly interesting. It was blog post that sort of captured your origin story and your vision. And the piece establishes early on that the vision is deeply rooted in your past. I think this would be a good opportunity to tee up the conversation. If you can take us through the long and winding path that led Tom Karl to R1.
Oh my gosh! You probably saw it on the blog post. R1 Discover, Imagine What We See, and it is a journey. It's been a journey to bring this into this mental health and wellness space. And it started actually. Let me just start off by saying one of the reasons why I'm in this space today is because of my own recovery journey around alcoholism. In my family system, progressed in myself, affecting my family, my work life, my physical health. And so it put me in settings that I never thought I would be in, right? Treatment settings, recovery settings. It wasn't on my path, Charles. It wasn't my plan. But that's where I came to see this new space where I could bring in learning tools. But the backdrop really is, it really started about 1990 when I got one of my first roles out of Duke University. After about 4 years working for another kind of in a business operations role, I went and worked for an education company in the corporate space. And in that organization, they had tools. They were building little tools to engage people in building good conversation around how do I find mentors in my organization? How do I build a good network? How do I make sure I leverage my strengths and my interests? And it was all about, engagement and learning in a corporate setting. And one of the things we had there was a card deck. I mean, I remember because it was, and you might have seen it in the post, is I remember going the first day to the founder, who was just a brilliant practitioner. And she was really my mentor for many, many years. But she had a card deck that was really based on Holland's REASIC codes around, hey, what are my career interests? And I remember that first day going to that interview going, man, this is interesting. And I remember those cards were in the toolkit. There are all sorts of other kinds of learning tools. But it always intrigued me. And then as the story continues over working there for almost 20 years, was those cards, not that we didn't have other things that we did, were always the most engaging tool in the toolkit. It didn't matter if we were in the C-suite or if we were on the factory floor. People were getting insight. It was playful. It was comfortable. People let their guards down, and they just built really good, engaging conversations through insight.
Well, tell us about these discovery cards, which is, I think it's fair to say, the foundation of your learning system.
Yeah. Yeah. So the card, and this is the card deck. I mean, I know the listeners can't see it, but it was called Dill Me In. It was really a little card deck on career interests. And so the idea for the discovery cards was when I was in these settings with in my back in my recovery settings that I got thrown into, I just saw a lot of people disengaged. People just were bored. They were, we were being talked at. We had old school worksheets. It was a very one kind of one modality. And I was just, and I was, I was in treatment, but I was also an observer of the setting. And one of the things I saw was it wasn't that people were leaving just because of their substance use. It was they weren't engaged in how they like to process information. It was basic. We weren't letting people process before they got to answer a question. So the cards became a critical element in a thought process. Say, hey, imagine if we did some of the stuff we did with the cards in my other space and said, hey, let's do an activity, let's do something, and then start the conversation from some basis.
Well, take us through something very concrete. How would you use the cord for what purpose?
Yeah, okay. So multiple kinds of decks. We have decks in mental health and wellness, substance use and addiction, and life skills. A good one, I'll say in the life skills area. Hey, let's just I'm going through a lot of change right now in whatever environment I'm in. And us as psychologically as human beings, we look outside of ourselves for standards, and we look for values is actually what we do. So we have a card deck around values. And the way the cards work is, hey, instead of let's just talking about values, Charles, let's explore ours. Everybody grab a deck, and I want you to grab the cards out. I want you to shuffle them up. And I want everybody to take about 4 or 5 minutes. And this is before we even get into the conversation, right, with this group, is let's just see what ours are, and then we'll go from there. So here's what I want you to shuffle up the cards, and I want everybody to take a moment and make two piles. This value, as you read each value, is it important to you today or not?
Mm.
Super simple. And we're just going to get people to go through kind of a reflective learning process, make two piles. Then we're going to have them take the pile that they said were their values. Hey, lay those all out on the table. I want you to really look at those again. Think about yourself, where you are right now. I want you to pick your top.
You know what's really interesting about that to me, just thinking about this, that there's an element of randomness built into that, right? You're shuffling the deck, and out come these issues that now you're going to be bringing out and talking about. And as you well know, the stigma that attaches to reaching out for any kind of support prevents people from doing that. So any way you could lower that stigma, lower that barrier. And it seems to me that element of randomness, I for years they've talked about gamification, but it was, sort of imposed, fake. It kind of was oftentimes silly. And just like with any game, the novelty wears off. But what you're talking about is a certain element of randomness that never really wears off, never really wears out.
There's a game exactly, and Frank, my business partner, Frank Bomer, he's brought the technology piece in for us, and there is that gamification piece, and it's embedded in the cards themselves. There's a randomness to them. There's an element of picking and choosing, right? There's an element of finding me is really what we're trying to do with the cards is let me find me, and there is a stigma reduction, especially going to topics like substance use around, hey, let's look at these behaviors. They're just behaviors. They're neither good nor bad, but let's pick ones that you're experiencing or not. So it starts to destigmatize some of the behaviors. It makes them more concrete, more real, but it makes it easier for people to lean into because because they're leaning in through the lens of me.
Right. Right. No, for sure. By the way, I want to get into the technology in a moment and how you've taken the Discover cores and moved into this online system. But what I want to ask you, when did you discover, when did you start R1? What year?
The idea came out of 2017.
2017.
2017, I had just kind of came out of my last kind of treatment setting, and I was trying to figure out what I was going to do, and the cards were on my desk, and I was sitting there going, I wanted to go and figure out so there they were, and I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to try to bring this learning system, build a learning system, and go into behavioral health.
So what kind of reception did you meet early on? I mean, there are other tools out there that purport to provide personalized learning based on your learning style, et cetera. Some may be more effective than others. What need did you see beyond believing in the card system, experiencing it for yourself, and realizing its value and potential power? What need did you see that was unmet in the marketplace?
Um, I didn't see a multimodality system. So I didn't see something that could be both hands-on and online. And, through that experience I was just sharing with you, where I'd be learning about me, I'd be getting some information about me, but then that information about me could be used by the practitioner team. It could actually go into and be translated right into the treatment notes at some level because it's information that's coming out of the individual. So part of it was seeing that there wasn't anything that was generating data that could flow easily into other systems. That was one of the things that I saw. And that came out of, ready for this, it came out of our experience in my other business where, hey, we had a card deck around career interest, but you know what we did with it? Hey, at Capital One, we put it on their main website and said, hey, learn something about you and see where you fit in at Capital One. So people would do the cards, they'd get their little profiles, and then what would happen? It would show you all the jobs that met your interests. Well, that's an interesting use of technology, right? Show me jobs at Capital One that are based on my own interests, right? In my disciplines. So it was the same kind of idea. What can you do with mental and behavioral health where you could take information about the individual and then link it to other systems?
On that blog post or in that blog post, I mentioned you asked the question, which is probably the question, certainly one of the questions. How do you get individuals to counseling that don't want counseling? We started talking a little bit about lowering those barriers, the randomness built into it. What are you seeing out there since you've rolled out the very first incarnation of these cards? Now you're doing it online. What did you see then? What are you seeing now as far as breaking down those barriers and bringing people in that otherwise would be resistant?
Yeah, I think great question, Charles. I think part of the the challenge for the practitioners out there is once you leave me in setting, how do I keep connected to you? And there's apps out there doing that, right? But I still got to do something to nudge you around either more learning for yourself or help you build more insight so that you might want to come back and meet with me again. And so how do you provide those practitioners with a way to pre-setting, post-setting, be able to give a little, hey, Charles, when you just came off of that recurrence of use, and we had that discussion today about some of those warning signs that were popping up, why don't you go do this? Hey, why don't you go do this little 2-minute activity, watch this little video, do a 3-minute activity, and see what you see on your own. And then we'll talk about that the next time we come together. That's a nice use of content. Like not a lot of content, but it's relevant to the individual. And maybe if that individual does it, they'll come back because they got something out of it that was meaningful for them and relevant for them based on what they had done in that session. I don't know if that makes
Mhm.
sense.
Yeah, no, it does. I mentioned randomness, but I think there is an element of simplicity to this also very attractive. And I know you speak to that yourself.
I mean, the simplicity is so simple. It really. I have to speak about the tool a lot. When we go meet with new folks, but it
Maybe
really,
I should refer to it as deceptive simplicity.
it's how do you engage people through and have them be curious. That's what engagement's about. Have them be curious, right? Have them lean in. How do you do that in a self-discovery process where I can learn something about me? I can, in the process, build my vocabulary in a topic that I have no understanding or experiencing in, right? New knowledge, and find myself words to describe what's going on with me, and then be able to express it to others, first to myself, be able to express it to myself. The first conversation is always with me, and then I'm able to express it to other people. And that is the simplicity of what the cards do. They
Mm.
give me a way to dive in, pick, choose, find me. Hey, it's even cooler, Charles, that we're grounding the tools in an evidence-based model. Hey, so learn about values in Schwartz's values wheel. Learn about change in the stages of change by Dr. Prochaska and DiClemente. Learn about ACEs through the lens of the, CDC and the Kaiser Foundation, right? Through the research. But it's that simple. It's just about me finding myself through a reflective process, and then being able to say, what do I do with that? How do I put that now into practice?
Mm. You used evidence-based. Obviously, those are words that are near and dear to Chestnut Lighthouse Institute. That's the basis of everything that they do. So maybe you can share with our listeners the work you're doing with Chestnut, how that relationship came about, some of the things you're going to be doing going forward.
Yeah, we are, as you can imagine, we are grateful to have been found or and becoming more aligned with Chestnut House and the Lighthouse Institute, and Dr. Dennis's work and Rod Robinson at Bureau of Indian Affairs. We met Rod. I met Rod at the National Association of NADCP. It's really the Drug Court Association, right? So he was there. He came by our booth and was fascinated with the tools. Having, as he would put it, this is Rod Robinson, and I want to speak for Rod, is intensive education that could be a key component for some of the settings that they had, that they had established across the tribal nations.
Now, when did that interaction happen?
So
How long ago?
about 3 years ago. About 3 years ago.
So, at what point did you move, excuse me, the Discover cards online and have this whole online system?
So it's been about 3 years since we decided it was at a point, we're a small company, self-funded. And so it was, the first card deck helped fund the second card deck, helped fund the third,
Right.
facilitator guide. We then had enough money to say, hey, let's start the technology and build some videos. So that was about 3 years ago. Frank Bomer joined me. He comes out of Booz Allen Hamilton, built some great enterprise software solutions there. And it was a friend of mine. And so he came on board to bring it online about 3 years ago. Yeah.
So, if you would just describe some of the projects or the work you're doing with Chestnut, what that involves.
Yeah, right now, we are grateful to have been a tool in the toolkit for the teams out in the detention centers. So when they're out in the tribal nations and they want to have that educational component, they have initially have used our group kits and our individual card decks and our facilitator guides, mostly the group kits. We have the cards are packaged as, hey, everybody in the group grab a deck. Let's do a little activity, right? So it's a very fun experience. So they have used all of our group kits at all the detention centers. We've trained people throughout their group to train others. So we have a train the trainer model. And so they have been implementing the kits at all the detention centers.
So, is one of the goals once they get interested with the kits, they start doing activities with those kits to move them online to
Yes.
facilitate even deeper engagement, to gather data. How does that work?
Absolutely. And it's a beautiful evolution process because now the teams there understand the card system, right? They know the content, and now it's a great, easy path to get it online. So right now they're beginning to use the online at the detention centers, but it'll even be more powerful when we get connected to Pathways to Wellness. So Pathways to Wellness will be that system that they're using to implement the gain assessment, right? And it's a case management system. So then they'll be able to assign, have people take R1 activities as a resource, and then be able to bring that data back into the case management system around each individual about what they're learning, what their needs are, and will be another data input into that system.
That is really fascinating. What else is in the offing and the near intermediate future as far as developing new decks, perhaps incorporating new technology, AI, for instance?
It's another great question. So We worked really hard, and it's been a short time in a self-funded company to get R1 Discover up, deploy it in all sorts of settings around the country, build all the API services, meaning that we're actually an interactive curriculum service, meaning we can, through APIs, connect any data, user management. So we're all set up for integration. We can integrate with any platform. And so that has been a big lift for us. Now that we're there, we're going to be bringing on new features, more knowledge checks for folks, group features. We're going to be bringing in more content, more videos. We have a roadmap of about 50, 60 topics. Right now we have 22. Moving fast by the end of the year to have 30, 40. So more topics, more content, and more features. AI is on the radar screen. We want to have more, bring it in slowly for personalized reports. Take the data that we generate from the individual and then build an AI simple report to say, hey, Charles, here's what here's what your data is showing, in a more of a text kind of personalized report, or we have text to speech on our platform, so you can read it back to the individual. And we're also, and this is really super key for me and for R1, is we're all about accessibility. And so the next lift for us is R1 Discover has to be in Spanish, German, Chinese, right, Portuguese, French Canadian, so that we can really be truly an accessible resource.
Oh, that's great. Receiving Mike Dennis's blessing, the blessing of Chestnut Lighthouse. Anybody who's in this field knows that is meaningful. It means that you're doing the right thing. So congratulations, everything you're doing, and it's really exciting, the work that you're doing independently, and the work obviously you're doing with Chestnut.
I mean, we are, and I say, and you just nailed it. I mean, we have been so lucky. I'll say that when the first call I made for R1 was, I knew intuitively I could not get this thing off the ground unless I had a thought leader. I called Dr. Prochaska and Dr. DiClemente on the Stages of Change and said, here's an idea. Here's how I could elevate the workforce and get more engagement on Stages of Change. And they said, cool, we'll partner with you. So they were very helpful, and that's been the path. And we have just been so grateful to find Dr. Dennis and the Lighthouse team. We see them as the innovators in the field, especially what they're doing with the Mosaic platform that they're building.
Yes,
and so
that's exciting.
We can tell you, we just being a resource in that platform is our goal. I mean, that's all we do, is build interactive curriculum.
That is a good place to be. Tom, I want to thank you again for spending this time with me today. Really do appreciate it.
Thank you, Charles. It's a pleasure. I'm looking forward to our paths crossing again soon.
Indeed, indeed. Today I spoke with Tom Karl, the CEO and founder of R1 Learning, providing interactive, evidence-based curriculum that engages and retains individuals in service, increases practitioner effectiveness through workforce training, and generates data for measuring outcomes. Tom joined me today from his headquarters in frosty but thawing Arlington, Virginia. This is Charles Epstein for the Catalyst Podcast. Thanks for listening.